Chapter 13. V. Alt. It turned out that the Weasleys didn't actually pack until the morning of September 1st. After a lovely last evening at the Burrow, where Mrs. Weasley cooked an amazing meal, the twins shot off fireworks, and Harry went to bed feeling more at home than he had anywhere in his life. He woke at dawn to pure chaos. Items were scattered all over the house. Mrs. Weasley was trying to get everyone to eat breakfast. Scabbers was still missing, and then 3 other boys remembered Harry's inventory. "I don't have time to fold these," Ron said, shoving clothes into a sack so they'd count as one item, and then thrusting them into Harry's arms. "These won't fit in our trunks," Fred announced, handing him their brooms. "And Filch might search our trunks, so take these," George added, handing him a box of contraband. "Guys, I have a limit," Harry insisted, but obligingly put the items into inventory while trying to figure out whether he could fit all of his own stuff into his trunk. He had also been relying on the inventory rather than careful packing. Somewhere in the chaos, he didn't notice that he'd taken enough large items that his grid had filled up. Ron handed him a pewter cauldron full of socks, and Harry got a message. "Overflow items sent to Vault, uh-oh," Harry said. "What-oh?" Ron asked, realizing that Harry was looking at him like his socks and cauldron were gone. "The inventory filled up, and it said it sent that to a vault," Harry admitted. Then a second inventory window opened that said Vault at the top, and there was Ron's cauldron of socks. Harry breathed a sigh of relief. "Never mind. Apparently I have a vault, too." "You can get to your Gringotts vault from anywhere?" Ron asked. "No, I bet it's just part of the game," Harry began, then noticed that, indeed, in addition to the seemingly endless grid of new squares and Ron's socks, the vault window had its own money readout on the top. A very large money readout on top. "No, yeah, you're right. This must be into my Gringotts vault." Ron just shook his head and handed Harry even more stuff, then went to tell the twins. "Then get in here," George yelled. As soon as Harry exited Ron's door to go over to the twins' bedroom, the vault window closed. "That's weird," he said, trying to open it back up. "Can only open vault in sleeping area or bank." "Oh, well, that makes more sense, I guess," Harry said, having been wondering why he had a limited inventory if he could just put stuff in and out of his Gringotts vault at any time. "I don't think I'm going to be able to get the rest of this stuff out until we get to the dorms," he explained to the boys in Fred and George's room. "I have to be in something it considers a bank or my bedroom to open my vault." "Fair enough," Fred shrugged and continued to shove belongings at him. Mrs. Weasley looked suspiciously at the 4 boys, fully packed and seemingly having no trouble with their trunks while even Percy wasn't ready yet. "Are you sure you got everything?" she insisted. "Plenty of time to do another sweep," Ron shrugged. They even had time to help Ginny get packed, though Harry helped best by staying out of her line of sight so she wouldn't get embarrassed. He kind of felt bad not telling her about his powers. Maybe when he knew her better. From inside her room, he heard Ron ask, "Did you want that diary?" "Oh, yes, I'd have forgotten it. Thanks, Ron," she said, clearly going to get a book that she'd left out. "Where'd you get that anyway?" her brother asked. Both boys had seen the girl writing in the thin black book over the last week or two. "Diagon Alley," she said, and Harry could tell without seeing her that she was shrugging. "I think that's everything. Did you look under your bed?" Harry asked from outside. Ron had found like 5 things under his bed after declaring himself done. Harry had found even more, but at least he'd been on a folding camp bed, so he found them when the bed was stowed anyway. Ron's bed was a permanent fixture and against the wall, so had deep, secret recesses beneath where books and clothing could disappear. "Eep," Ginny squeaked, then took a moment and said, "Oh, thanks, Harry." There was another thump of her trunk lid. "Ron, sit on this so I can latch it." "Okay, and now really done." Ginny's trunk was much heavier than Ron and Harry's nearly empty ones as they helped her get it downstairs. Mrs. Weasley had gone back into the kitchen to finish cleaning up when they got back downstairs, and as they hoisted their trunks into the eye-wateringly space-expanded storage of the car, Mr. Weasley insisted, "Don't tell Marley the boot is charmed." "Can't she see that we all shouldn't be able to fit into an Anglia?" Harry checked. The car was so small that, without magic, there probably wouldn't even be space for Ginny in between the Weasley parents, let alone all 5 boys in the back seat. Mr. Weasley shrugged, efficiently conveying that his wife saw what she wanted to see and got mad about what she wanted to get mad about, and that he'd long ago ceased trying to figure those things out. "You're sure you all have everything?" she insisted, as she bustled up. This was the earliest they'd gotten out of the house for Hogwarts since Bill had started. She'd had no expectation that the first year she had to manage 5 kids packing, 6, counting Harry, would be the fastest. Everyone looked at each other, thought about it, and nodded. Harry just hoped that the goblins didn't do random spot checks on vaults and wonder why his vault, previously nothing but coins, was suddenly full of Weasley laundry, school supplies, and prank items. It was good that they'd packed so quickly. The drive from Otterycent, Catchpole, to King's Cross Station was only a little short of 300 kilometers and should have been a 4 or 5 hour trip on a busy Tuesday morning. That they did the trip in under 3 hours made Harry think that Mr. Weasley had built even more charms onto the car than he'd admitted to, including something to keep the police from noticing the tiny turquoise car barreling along the straightaways at well above the speed limit. Several of the other wizarding families on Platform 9 3/4 looked frankly shocked that the Weasleys were showing up at 10:00 rather than at the last possible second. "We need to tell Lee," Fred told Harry quietly as they reached the platform. "We'll find you to discuss," George nodded. "Fine, but nobody else. And make sure he keeps it a secret," Harry requested. He'd figured that the twins would have no secrets from Lee Jordan, their roommate, co-conspirator, and Quidditch announcer. Both twins tapped their noses simultaneously, declared, "Bye, Mum, bye, Dad," and got onto the train. Mrs. Weasley was fussing over Ginny and acknowledged the twins with a wave. "Write to us to let us know what house you get." "It'll be Gryffindor, Mum," Ginny insisted. "Even if it's not, we'll be happy all the same," she told her daughter. "Are you going to sit with Ron and Harry?" "I think I'll find Luna," Ginny said, blushing. "You can sit with us if you want," Harry offered, still nonplussed by the girl being so embarrassed around him. "Is Luna the girl that sees things?" He checked with Ron, who nodded. "SRK," Ginny said, "but you can help me get my trunk on." She managed to get out. "Sure, by Mrs. Weasley." "Mr. Weasley," Harry insisted. "It's Marley and Arthur, dear," she corrected him for about the 50th time, giving him a big hug after embracing her other 2 children. Percy had already long departed for the prefect's car. "Have a wonderful year, all of you." They got Ginny's trunk stowed in an empty compartment after the girl determined that they'd managed to beat her friend, and then Harry and Ron found the compartment that Hermione had already claimed a little further back in the train. "Good," she said, greeting both boys. "I've had some thoughts for how to tackle the library efficiently once we get to school." Before Hermione could expand on a strategy for Harry trying to fit the entirety of the Hogwarts library into his head, they caught her up on the parts of the last couple of weeks they hadn't included in their letters. "A dedicated connection to your Gringotts vault sounds like a security flaw that the goblins wouldn't like." Hermione pursed her lips. "We probably should keep this from becoming general knowledge, as much as I want to ask the teachers all about it. Maybe we can find information in the histories about whether this has happened before." "Did you get a Mensa session?" Harry asked, remembering she'd mentioned having a proctored IC test. She grinned. "Yes, they demanded I join when I scored a 170, and I rather think that I should have been higher, but their test is geared toward adults, so I think I could have scored higher if I'd had more of the context they expected." "Higher, like 200, Harry checked. "Exactly," Hermione answered. "Though I suppose it's possible that the IC test ratings aren't exactly measuring whatever your game system is. But it would be a lot easier if we could assume that your game score multiplied by 10 is your IC. What is that little person next to the Malfoys?" At the apparently non sequitur, Harry and Ron followed Hermione's gaze out of the train to the platform, where Draco, his father, and probably his mother had entered. Narcissa Malfoy Warlock, level 11 Slytherin, momentarily distracted by how Draco's mother wasn't a Death Eater, he almost missed Darby following the family. But the little elf seemed to know Harry was looking at him, met his eyes, nodded, and then disappeared. "That was Darby. Guess he works for the Malfoys," Harry explained. "Figures," Ron snorted. "I suppose we'll have to keep a close eye on Draco this year. If his father is up to something dangerous, he might have Draco carrying it out," Hermione figured. "Or at least he would know." "Yeah," Harry nodded absently. Now that he was looking out at the crowd, the sea of names, classes, levels, and guilds was a little overwhelming. Previously, the most densely packed location he'd been to was out to eat with the Grangers, which was nothing like so many adults and children swarming around a train platform. He was trying to see if any useful information popped out, but with so many it was mostly noise. That is, until he realized he should check out the families that talked to the Malfoys and look for one particularly useful piece of information. Sure enough, about half of the parents of Slytherin students he recognized were tagged as Death Eaters. Goyle, Crabbe, and Nut for sure. Oh, and Mr. Parkinson, Harry started explaining to his friends. Death Eaters. Ha, not Greengrass or Davis parents. Zabini's mum. I don't see the Bulstrodes anywhere. Any of them high level, Ron checked. Most of them look about the same as the Malfoys, Harry nodded. 11 or 12, but Mr. Nut is 15. He seems pretty old, though, so that makes sense. Anyone not in Slytherin? Hermione checked. I don't know, Harry shrugged. It's hard to pick them out if I don't know who to focus on. It's like when a typewriter gets stuck, just names on top of names out there. Hard to pick them apart. Be a great skill for an aura, though, Ron mused. I think we're about to head out, Hermione said, checking her watch to see that it was 11 as the train started to shudder with movement and the last kids on the platform rushed aboard. They'd pulled out of the station by the time Fred, George, and Lee made it to their compartment. Lee Jordan Mage, Level 4 Gryffindor, Colloportus. We've sworn him to secrecy, George explained as they closed the door behind themselves and cast a locking charm. But he needs to see the show before he really believes, Fred nodded. Harry nodded, but added, First off, Lee Jordan, do you want to join the Marauders? Isn't that the guys on the map? Lee asked. Sure. Lee Jordan has joined the Marauders, then let me call this guild meeting to order, Harry grinned, brain churning with ideas for how to make use of his father's legacy to prank the Death Eaters into oblivion. Chapter 14, Charty. The train ride to Hogwarts was mostly uneventful. They caught Lee up on what they'd found out about the game system and brainstormed ways they could make use of it. Hermione bit back a few comments about not doing pranks. After all, she'd known what she was getting into when she joined the guild. As long as the targets were deserving and they didn't get caught, she was grudgingly okay with it. It turned out that Hermione wasn't against pranking as much as she was scared of losing points. Draco and his goons had come by in the afternoon to start something, but hadn't been able to open the door, and their eyes widened when they realized that they would be outnumbered anyway, including 3 fourth-years, no less. After they left, the 6 kids had a laugh over how Crabbe and Goyle were still only first level, slacking off in class as much as they did seem to have repercussions. As they piled out of the train and got to ride in the carriages like the other big kids, Harry blinked and said, I think I'm glitching or something. What do you mean? Hermione asked. There's a weird word floating in front of each of the carriages, he explained. This Stral, I'll add it to the research list, Hermione said. There's Neville. Neville, you want to ride with us? Sighing in relief, Ron and Harry's roommate nodded and climbed aboard. Neville Longbottom Mage, Level 2 Gryffindor. How was your summer, Nev? Harry asked. Pretty good, got some gardening done. You, the chubby boy said. Got to spend some time at Hermione's and Ron's, Harry shrugged. Pretty good summer overall, thanks for the birthday card. It's easy to remember, Neville nodded, since it's the day after mine. Oh no, Hermione said. Neville, you never said, I'm sorry. We should have sent you a card, too. It's no big deal, the boy said, lowering his eyes but privately pleased that they hadn't deliberately skipped him. I guess I didn't mention it. We should probably make sure everyone knows birthdays, she insisted. Nobody knew about mine last year either. It's September 19th. That's less than 3 weeks from now, Ron realized. You should have said when we could get something for you from the market. Just acknowledging it will be fine, Hermione waved off, though privately hoping for presents. The size of the student body, on average every day or two, is probably someone's birthday. Someone in Gryffindor every week, at least. It could get exhausting, making a big to-do. Speaking of to-do, Harry concentrated, and his game system obliged with another reminder quest. Only turn 13 once get Hermione a present for September 19th. Nodding to himself, he started people-watching out of the carriage. By and large, the names for the other students were pretty much what he expected. Everyone displayed their name, their level, usually the same as their year, and their house as their only guild. Several of the upper-year students had multi-classed already, as Percy had. He waved at his Quidditch captain, Oliver Wood, who was a mage athlete, and that was really the only other upper-year he knew personally, though he might be interested in what the rival Quidditch players had classed into. No, what he was really interested in was the information on the professors. He realized he was zoning out when someone asked him a question. "What were we talking about?" he asked. Before Hermione could recount, another pane in the lower right of his vision opened, which seemed to be a transcript of the recent conversation. The last line said, "Ron Weasley. Reckon Lockhart's all he's cracked up to be, Harry." His friend was obviously trying to set up informing Hermione of the reality of the new professor's low level, since they'd forgotten to mention it to her in private. Oh, no. "I think he's just a novelist," Harry said, marveling at his new chat log. "If I had to rate him on, say, a scale of 1 to 20, he said, stressing that range for Hermione's benefit, he'd probably only be an 8. Hermione's eyes widened as she got it. "But he's done so much." "He says he's done so much," Ron said, glad that his gambit had paid off. With his improved charisma, Hermione even seemed to believe him. He must have made up most of that to sell books. She frowned, a little more of her childhood naivete evaporating. "He should be forced to say that they're just novels," she finally declared. Neville said, "Not a lot of rules on what you can say in wizarding books. Look at all the stories about what Harry got up to when he was little." "Wait, what?" Harry blinked. "Oh, yeah. Ron, didn't you say Ginny had read a lot of stories about me? That's stupid." "You wouldn't believe some of them, mate." Ron nodded. "Ginny's favorites is about how you stole a flying carpet and defeated the Genie King when you were only 5. "Crazy." Harry just shook his head. Hermione, still annoyed that the handsome young professor was probably not actually a world-traveling monster hunter, managed. "Maybe you could let us know how the other professors rate on that same scale at the feast." "Right," Harry agreed, interested in the same thing. They were almost up to the front gate of the school, and he said, "That's a weird tree." Somehow he'd never noticed it until it was backlit by the setting sun. The tall tree was mostly leafless, gnarled branches seeming to move in the fading red light. "The Whomping Willow," Hermione explained. "It's talked about in Hogwarts, a history. They try to keep us from that part of the grounds because it's animate and has a bad attitude." "Ah, all right," Harry said. He brought up his map, and where the tree was, there was a mark very similar to the one where they'd found the gnome dungeon in Ron's yard. "I wonder if it's on top of some kind of secret passage," he said, stressing it for Ron and Hermione, whose eyes widened. Honestly, he was probably going to have to read the rest of their year mates into the secret sooner or later, just so he didn't have to come up with ways to explain what he was seeing around them. The only problem would be that Lavender and Parvati, Hermione's roommates, keep a secret. Maybe just the boys' dorm could know about it. With his map up, Harry was seeing all kinds of extra details. Most of them weren't too surprising, since the game map's translucent geometry lined up with the line art on the Marauder's map and his own memory of the school's layout. But he could already see quite a few exclamation marks to indicate quests, mostly in the Great Hall or in the cots around them. It seemed Hogwarts would be as busy with quests as they'd hoped. Not seeing anything immediately unexpected on the map, he closed it as the carriages stopped, and the students filed into the front door, across the entry hall, and into the Great Hall, taking their spaces at their tables. It was less stressful than their first-year boat ride, but less magical, too. As he walked in, his main quest updated in a way that was annoyingly vague. The Chamber of Secrets, main quest. Dark conspiracies are afoot at Hogwarts. Get to Hogwarts, overhear a strange whispering. Harry resolved to worry about that later. Finally, as they took their places at the long Gryffindor table on the left of the hall, Harry got to scope out the professors at the high table, for all that the ghost that taught history, Binns, was missing, and the assistant headmistress was still outside assembling the first years. Charity Burbage, mage teacher, level 9 Hogwarts staff, Ravenclaw Bathshedder babbling magister slash roomcrafter, level 11 Hogwarts staff, Lamplighters, Hufflepuff, Phyllis Flitwick magister duelist, level 14 Order of the Phoenix, Hogwarts staff, Ravenclaw head, European Dueling Society, Rolanda Hooch broomrider, level 17 Hogwarts staff, Hufflepuff, Sylvanus Kettleburn mage ranger, level 17 Hogwarts staff, Rubius Hagrid ranger. Level 16 Order of the Phoenix, Hogwarts Staff, Gryffindor, Albus Dumbledore Archmage, Level 20 Order of the Phoenix, Leader, Hogwarts Staff, Headmaster, Wisengamot Chief Warlock, International Confederation of Wizards, Supreme Mugwump, European Alchemists, Gryffindor, Severus Snape Potioneer / Level 14. Hogwarts Staff, European Potioneers, Slytherin Head. Gilderoy Lockhart Mage Entertainer. Level 8 Hogwarts Staff, Ravenclaw Pomona Sprout Magister Druid. Level 12 Hogwarts Staff, Hufflepuff Head. Aurora Sinistra Cosmologist. Level 10 Hogwarts Staff, International Skywatchers. Septima Vector Arithmancer. Level 12 Hogwarts Staff, Munter Sybil Trelawney Seer. Level 9 Hogwarts Staff, Ravenclaw Irma Pince Bibliomancer. Level 11 Hogwarts Staff. Ravenclaw, that was a lot of information. Harry whispered the high points to Ron and Hermione. I don't know why Snape has so much marked with question marks, he grumbled. As he peered at Snape, the potions professor seemed to sense him paying attention. His least favorite teacher frowned, and suddenly his title changed. Severus Snape Potioneer, Level 14 Hogwarts Staff, European Potioneers, Slytherin Head. Whoa! Snape made the question marks go away, Harry whispered. Hermione's eyes widened as she took that information in, adding it to her theories about the game system. Harry shrugged and continued, and I'll be able to see Dumbledore from a mile away for all his guilds, and I guess we really can figure that 20 is the maximum. And Flitwick is also part of the order. Oh, and so is McGonagall, he said, noticing their head of house entering the room. Minerva McGonagall Magister Transmuter, Level 15 Order of the Phoenix, Hogwarts Staff, Assistant Headmistress, Gryffindor Head. Behind her, at the back of the hall, he spotted the school's elderly caretaker slipping in the back. Argus Filch Conservator, Level 11 Hogwarts Staff. So many new classes, Harry said, checking his codex. Half Flick might be into art. To his surprise, a conservator was a class for art maintenance and restoration. Maybe the disagreeable old squib was mostly there to take care of all the magical paintings. Most of the other professors' classes were just a hybrid of mage, and something else that was obvious from their specialization. He continued to give a running, quiet summary of the classes and levels he was seeing as the new first years entered. The sorting process seemed to take a lot longer when you weren't nervously waiting for your own turn, but you were waiting for the food to show up. He barely paid attention to who was going where or their names, since he'd have that information easily to hand. Midway through, Ron pointed out Luna Lovegood, the girl he'd been talking about that was Ginny's friend and might have the Fey perk. She went to Ravenclaw. Finally, Ginny got sorted into Gryffindor to her relief, and it was all done. Dumbledore stood, his mountain of guild tags looming over the great hall, and said, "Welcome to another year at Hogwarts. Before we eat, I'd like to introduce our new professor for defense against the dark arts, Gilderoy Lockhart." The man in question smiled and waved at the crowd, who seemed pretty excited by him. Maybe at least he would be fun in class, even if he was a bit of a fraud, Harry hoped. And I think that's enough for before the meal. Let's eat. The feast was as excellent as it had been the previous year, though Harry wasn't quite as starved as he'd been as a first year. He consequently got to enjoy the food more, in contrast to Ron, who was packing it away as if he'd never gotten a square meal in his life. Harry still surreptitiously slid some of the tastier items into his inventory, just in case he wanted a snack later. What growing adolescent boy wouldn't want a personal refrigerator full of snacks accessible at all times? In the noisy hall with lots of conversations going on around him, Harry was finding his new chat transcript very helpful for keeping up with what everyone was saying. He absently willed it to scroll upwards, and it seemed to contain every bit of speech he'd said or heard for at least the past week. That might make taking notes in class a lot easier, since he could just pay attention during the class and then make a copy after. He knew Hermione was going to be annoyed again when he explained that feature. "You're Harry Potter." He was distracted from his musing by the mouse-haired boy wearing a large camera that had shoved into the bench across from him. "You're Colin Creevey," he said in return. "How'd you— Oh, right, they said our names before the hat," Colin said, giving Harry more credit than he'd earned since he just read the name above his new first-level housemate's head. "That was brilliant. Can I get a picture of you? Will you sign it?" "I'd prefer if you didn't," Harry told him, something about the boy's mannerisms rubbing him the wrong way on top of his aversion to celebrity. "You should go get pictures of Professor Lockhart. He's even more famous than me, and he loves signing stuff." The boy's face fell, and he looked like he was considering a counter-argument. Harry kind of wished he could silently send out a chat message to everyone in the Marauders to help get this kid away from him. He may have even muttered, "Help," under his breath so Colin didn't hear. But they all seemed distracted by their own conversations. Well, they did right up until he made the near-silent request. In his chat log, in a different color, a new line had appeared. Marauders, active, Harry Potter. Help Hermione, Ron, Fred, George, and Lee all broke off their conversations to stare confusedly at him. Harry's own eyes widened, and he sub-vocalized again. Marauders, active, Harry Potter. This kid is really annoying. Lee adjusted first and said, "Harry, we need you down here to talk about Quidditch stuff." "Sorry, Colin, Quidditch business," Harry told the boy, getting up and moving down to sit with the fourth years. Ron and Hermione managed to extricate themselves as well to go sit with him. Colin probably didn't know that they weren't on the Quidditch team. "What was that?" Hermione hissed. "I heard you asking for help in my head." I think I figured out one thing guilds are good for," Harry explained. "I guess I can talk to everyone in the group, privately probably. It says only the active guild members got it." Hermione squinted like she was concentrating, but nothing happened. "Did anyone get that?" They all shook their heads, and she tried again. Hermione Granger replies, "Test. I saw that you said test as a reply," Harry explained. "I didn't really hear it, though." Everyone else shook their heads that they hadn't heard anything at all from Hermione. "Try just replying to Harry," she explained. Ron Weasley replies, "Harry, do you need help?" "I got that too," Harry nodded. "Well, that's less useful than if we could all communicate," Hermione frowned. "But Harry could pass messages to the group at least, and send out a quick alert if there's trouble. And share test answers in class," Ron suggested. "Ronald, no." Hermione corrected, though from her face she'd already also come to that realization. Ron asked, "Wait, did your dad's friends hear that?" "Oh no, you said only active members got it. But if you could talk to the inactive ones, you could talk to them too." "They'd think they were going mad," Harry shrugged, but considered it. "You're not thinking big enough," Hermione said, looking furtively down the entire table. "If you needed to, and could explain how you did it, you could talk to everyone in Gryffindor." Harry's mouth dropped wide open. Had his game system suddenly made a quarter of the school effectively psychic, with him as the relay? Chapter 15. Spell B. Ook. "Okay, let's look at the math," Hermione insisted from the back table in the library she was sharing with Harry and Ron. The first half week of school had gone pretty well. Harry had been able to use his map to dodge Lockhart and Colin Creevey. They were both clearly orbiting him for his fame. Ron had done pretty well in Transfiguration class with his new wand, which made him feel better. Hermione had admitted that Lockhart was a fraud after his first class was just a quiz about his favorite things, and then unleashing pixies on them and running away. They'd easily used the freezing charm to catch them all after summer practice. Lockhart had tried to use the joke spell the twins had mentioned. And most importantly, Harry learned that he got XP every time he earned points in class. Not much XP, but it gave him a reason to try to do well. Owing to the first couple of days of settling in and Oliver Wood's insane dedication to Quidditch, it had taken them until Saturday afternoon to finally get to the library. Ron was going to have to leave them early to go polish trophies. He'd gotten detention for hitting Malfoy with the slug vomiting jinx after Draco had called Hermione a bad name at the Quidditch practice that morning. They'd spent as long as they could, including running right back after dinner, trying to maximize the time and to figure out how much information they could cram in Harry's brain. Hermione outlined her findings. The shelves are all different sizes, and the books obviously vary in thickness, but let's assume an average of about 500 books per shelf. "We've done 8 shelves in the last 6 hours, but that's with both of us handing down and reshelving books so Harry can just crack them open to see if they're skill books. I don't know if that pace is sustainable for various reasons, but it's about 5.5 seconds per book. Let's assume that, especially if he's on his own, Harry could clear about a shelf an hour." "Sounds fair, unless I got bored," Harry agreed. It was interesting that Hermione had hit on the shelf as a unit of measurement, since Harry had already noticed that the library's layout could easily be rendered in a video game where each shelf was independently interactive. Since they'd so far only found 8 new skill books, he wouldn't be at all surprised if, like in many games, each shelf really only had one useful piece of information on it when it was interacted with. "Right. Well, I don't have an exact count," Hermione continued, but there must be a few hundred shelves. If you can do an hour or more a day, you could maybe get through it all this year." Harry breathed a sigh of relief. He was sure that she was going to suggest that he try to knock it all out in a week or two of marathon reading sessions. Not that it wasn't interesting work. 4 of 8 books he'd found already had given him his first point of owl creature handling, owl divination, owl enchanting, and owl spellcrafting. He was basically already into his electives for the next year. Even more importantly, the other half had actually given him points towards skills he already had. It had been recorded as skill XP, so he'd got an effective 2 points in each skill, though he assumed later books would be less effective if it cost more and more XP for each skill level. In his owl skills, he now had Charms 5, Combat Magic 3, Plant Defense 4, and Transfiguration 5. He was basically at grade level if Hermione's guess was correct. He couldn't wait until the next week's classes to see if he had visible improvements on the lessons. Was it weird that he couldn't wait for class? Gamification seemed to have turned him into an overachiever like Hermione. "I think we should take this slowly, so we don't miss anything useful," Hermione opined. "I'm already worried that there might be some books that are skill books that just don't notify you because you already have what they can teach you. And I'm interested in those books you couldn't use." A book on magical art and one on alchemy had told him he'd need to be at Newt level to learn their skills. "I think Ron and I should try reading the books that are skill books too." Before Ron could object, she said, "I think that they may be skill books because they're the easiest ones to get information out of. They may be better than our textbooks for learning quickly." "I knew this would end up with me doing more homework," Ron grumbled, but didn't outright refuse. He'd quite enjoyed just unshelving and reshelving books while Harry did all the learning. It felt academic without being onerous, but the idea that maybe the skill books would be less difficult to read than their textbooks was at least something. "All right, you two. I better go meet Filch before he comes looking for me." They waved as the redhead walked out to serve his detention. "It's a shame I can't get actual spells from the skill books," Harry complained to Hermione as they sorted through her notes after Ron left. "We may have just not found the right one yet," Hermione cautioned. "Potions either, though. You said none of your charms, transfigurations, or potions are in your codex." "Only the theory," Harry agreed. "It's a wonder that it doesn't have a section that's like a spellbook. Oh, I'm an idiot." Finally thinking about a spellbook had opened one up in front of him. "Yeah, here's everything I know. Like you said, there's a tab for spells, transfiguration, and potions. Oh, and one for dark magic. There's nothing on that tab," he narrated as he flipped through the new interface. "Interesting that the spells aren't broken down by whether they're charms, jinxes, curses, or whatever. It seems a rather arbitrary distinction anyway." Hermione shrugged. "I've been hoping that arithmancy class will explain how those categories are decided." "Does this spellbook do anything other than list them? Seems like it could be in the codex, if so." "Well, there's a graphic of me holding a wand next to each of them. The codex doesn't always have a picture. Oh, and each spell seems to have a level. I guess that's how good I've gotten at it," Harry explained. Oh, that's brilliant." He'd focused on one of the pictures, and it started moving. "It shows me an animation of the wand movements for the spell." He flipped to the potions tab and added, "and a step-by-step for each potion, including animations for how to stir." "Getting this for myself," Hermione quietly promised. "Oh, look, Madam Pince has a quest," Harry said, trying to distract his friend from her frustration at how useful the game system she didn't have was becoming. So far, they hadn't really had time to try doing any of the quests he'd noticed on offer around the school. Gamely putting away her notes and her annoyance at not having the game system, Hermione led Harry over to the checkout desk and asked the prim librarian, "Do you need any help this evening, Madam Pince?" She raised an eyebrow beneath the severely pointed, an exclamation pointed, hat, but aloud. "I do have quite a bit of shelving to get through before we close up. I suppose I can trust you to find the right shelves, Miss Granger, and keep this young man on task." "Of course, ma'am," she agreed, and Harry tried to nod encouragingly. "Very well." Pince pointed them to a rolling cart full of returned books. "Shelf stable daily quest reshelve, 030 books." "Ha, it says it's a daily quest," Harry explained as they rolled the cart along the aisles, trying to figure out where to put the books. "I wonder if that means we can do it more than once." Might be a way to become a mage librarian, Hermione allowed. And then a bibliomancer, once you get your mastery, Harry nodded, agreeing. I wonder how many bibliomancers there are. Did Madame Pince go to a library school after she graduated, or did she just learn it from the old Hogwarts librarian? I'm sure she'd love to tell us, Hermione agreed, after we finish all this shelving. Run these two over to the magical beasts section. It took them a surprisingly long time to figure out where to shelve all the books. If they did it enough, possibly daily, they'd at least probably have a better idea of how the library was laid out. All done, ma'am, Hermione informed the librarian as they rolled the empty cart back up. Quest complete 30 XP earned quest reward. Increased favor with Madame Pince. It's quite late, she nodded. Let me write you a note in case a prefect stops you on the way back to your dorms. That was probably as much thanks as they were likely to get from the taciturn librarian. Hall pass in hand, they headed out to the great stair. It's weird, Harry mused, being out in the halls at night, but it's allowed. The previous times they'd been out in the darkened hallways of the castle, and not in a giant pack of kids being led up to astronomy class, they'd had to sneak around. Let's go collect Ron. I see he and Filch are still down toward the trophy room. They walked in on their friend just finishing up, Argus Filch leaning against a wall overseeing the detention with a sneer. You two aren't allowed out this late, he snarled. His bony old cat hissed in agreement. Mrs. Norris cat familiar Argus Filch. Hall pass, Harry said, waving the note. We're just collecting Ron on the way back from the library. Filch inspected the note carefully, then said, Fine, don't dawdle. Straight to bed, you three. Yes, sir, he told the disagreeable old man, not interested in arguing. What he was interested in was checking out the secret passage that appeared to be in the room as marked on his map. But that would have to wait until Filch wasn't looming over them. He led the way out of the trophy room and back toward the stairs. I think my arm's about to fall off, Ron complained. What's the use of having a new wand if I have to polish the trophies by hand? Maybe you shouldn't have used that new wand to assault another student, Hermione said, but there wasn't much bite in it. I suppose if you're going to curse anyone and get a detention, making slugs come out of Draco's mouth was a good time. The slugs were less gross than what he said. And we actually got to finish our practice while they took him to Pomfrey to fix him, Harry agreed. You should teach us that jinx, Ron. I didn't really see how you did it. The spell had only showed up as a grey outline in his spellbook and didn't have an animation. Sure, Ron agreed. It's a good one that Fred and George showed me. Before Ron could go into the explanation, Harry was surprised to hear a whisper echoing through the floor, saying, Come, come to me, let me rip you, let me tear you, let me kill you. The whispers, Harry said, noticing the mark on his main quest checking off. Did you hear that? He checked. Hear what? Ron asked. I may have heard some pipes hissing, Hermione thought back. Pulling up his chat log to ask Fred, George, and Lee if they'd heard it, he spotted a new line. Unknown, says Parseltongue. Come to me, let me rip you, let me tear you, let me kill you. It was in Parseltongue. It's some kind of snake, Harry said, excited. Of course it is, Hermione groaned. You're a Parselmouth, Ron said, a half step behind. Harry realized he neglected to mention that to Ron. The Chamber of Secrets' main quest, dark conspiracies are afoot at Hogwarts. Get to Hogwarts, overhear a strange whispering, attend a Death Day party. No way. We're solving this now, Harry disagreed with his quest log, who knew how long he'd have to wait for whatever a Death Day party was. Looking on the map, the area nearby was basically clear, but he saw a red dot below. Let's go. We're chasing the snake, Hermione nearly shrieked. We have a hall pass, Ron said, as if that was what she was worried about. Honestly, it was half of what she was worried about, and did make her feel a little better. By the time they'd clattered down the great stair from the 4th floor to the 2nd, the dot had disappeared, however. The only name that Harry saw nearby was slightly translucent. I lost it, Harry informed them, but we could ask Myrtle Warren. Moaning Myrtle, Hermione shook her head. We'd better not. Nobody even uses that loo, she's so annoying. I doubt she was paying attention to anything but her own misery anyway. Harry was frantically trying to manipulate his map to see if anyone else might have seen anything. Inside the school, he was able to have it flip from floor to floor and zoom in, but it was a little fiddly to do when he was excited. None of the prefects or teachers seemed to be nearby, except Lockhart. His office was right down the hall, but Harry would rather ask an apparently annoying ghost before the professor. though as he flipped up several levels, he saw one name that seemed out of place. Ron. Why is your sister out after curfew?